No way they're gonna let this happen, right? Like, surely this is just a fluke. There's no reason to be concerned. Because, oh boy, if Boston lost this series, what a gigantic shit show that would be. Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference how this video performs in the YouTube algorithm. So I'm going to be talking about the Celtics' insane game versus the Miami Heat the other day, where they managed to lose to a Heat team without Jimmy Butler. But before that, we also have to talk about the other game of the day, which is the Thunder Pelicans game, which is obviously much less interesting because this was essentially a blowout pretty much from like the second half onward. If anything, I don't even remember what the point deficit was at halftime, but like I especially remember when the third quarter came around, the Thunder just started to pile it on and it became pretty clear who was going to win that one. To start talking about the Pelicans end of things, where they went wrong here, this was actually a big Jonas Valanciunas game in terms of his offense. Not so much rebounding the ball, because he had 20 rebounds in game 1, but he only finished with 7 in this one. But he was cooking in the post a lot, and there were multiple possessions where he just backed Chet down into the rim, and he got a layup. There was one where Chet emphatically denied him on that one, but there were more possessions where Val won than he lost. But he did overall lose the center matchup just because of modern conventions of basketball. You know, the idea of just like, you're so big, you can push this guy away and get a layup, that's cool. But honestly, it takes up so much time of the shot clock. It's such a slow possession. It's such a grinding halt. And it's so lacking in any level of dynamic to it. It's also pretty easy to bring help defense on it. I understand him playing more than I think otherwise if this team was healthy, because you don't have the scoring presence on the interior of Zion, and you really need whatever scoring presence you can get after you're stretching it so thin, because CJ is now the first option and Brandon Ingram is playing really hobbled, although he was better in this game. But that's not really what killed them in this one, as much as I love dogging on Jonas Valanciunas. It was open three-pointers just simply not going in. The amount of open three-pointers they got throughout this game, but especially in the first quarter, was comical. CJ got one that was like literally lick your finger, check the wind, like open, like wide open in the corner, and he got like 2 seconds to pause to take the shot. Didn't hit that one. Trey Murphy III missed 2 wide open ones. Herb Jones missed a wide open one in the corner. And I'm telling you, these are all uncontested catch and shoot jump shots. None of them were going in. Herb did start to heat up as the game went along. He went 4 for 7 from outside on the game as a whole. However, it was too little too late, because by the time that his shot started going in, the game was pretty much already out of reach. Ingram, 3 offensive fouls in the first quarter. Honestly, the Pelicans lost this game in the first quarter because it was so sloppy and so ugly. But 3 offensive fouls in the first is crazy. Obviously, he was playing injured, so I'm not going to knock him too much for really anything he does. But there were like 2 of those where it was like, dude, what were you doing? You just decided to walk through a defender like that was going to work in any capacity. Overall, he was underwhelming, but not terrible like he was in the first game. He shot 50% from the field on, I think, 10 shots, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. Hit a really difficult off-balance fadeaway in the lane, which he does that a lot. He also got hit in the gut on this move that Chet did, where he like lowered his shoulder a little bit. I don't think it was a dirty move or that it should have been called a foul or anything, just kind of an unfortunate positioning. But it got Chet a dunk, and then BI was on the floor for a while. Ironically, the play right after that, Lou Dort, it looked like he got bodied by Ingram, but the reality was Lou Dort flopped. So Ingram, like Chet, found himself comically open after knocking down BI, and then BI found himself comically open after Lou Dort decided to flop. He also got a really nice block on SGA, which I know that Ingram's capable of blocking shots normally, but the way he was hobbled in this one, surprised that he was able to get up enough, because all of his shots more or less were just mid-range shots. He really was not playing above the rim in this one, to say the least. CJ, 15 points on 14 shots. That's not good. Again, I'm not really criticizing him too much because he's just been asked to do so much more than he was in the regular season. Valanciunas, again, I have this in the notes, out-physical Chet, but Chet out everything else him in this game. And that's kind of illustrative of why that whole physicality thing that was used to knock Chet, and still is to some degree, it's just not that big of a deal. I feel like that's a lot of older school basketball sentiment coming into modern basketball principles. And like, sure, Valanciunas can push Chet out of the way for a layup every once in a while, but Chet can stretch the floor. Chet is a dynamic shot blocker. Chet can create for his teammates far better than Valanciunas can. There's a variety of reasons why that style of center is just way more viable in a modern basketball context. So to transition over to the Thunder in general, just to talk about Chet, 15 points on 14 shots in game 1. I mentioned covering that game that his offense was kind of underwhelming in that one, but he did have 5 blocks to make up for it. His defensive presence was very much felt. And this one, 2 blocks, not quite as ridiculous, but 26 points on 13 shots. He started 6 for 6 from the field and 3 for 3 from outside. In fact, I think all 3 of those threes came in the first quarter. Got a putback layup. As I mentioned, he got that dunk on Brandon Ingram, fader in the lane over a shorter defender, and then he got a really nice dunk off of this great handoff pass from Jalen Williams. SGA on fire. On fire in this game. Finished with 33 points. However, only 4 of those came from the free throw line. 29 points of pure buckets, and let me tell you, almost all of these were jump shots. I feel like he got 2, maybe 3 layups in this entire game. The rest of it, mid-range pull-ups, 3-pointers. He went 3 for 5 from outside. I think all of them were off of the dribble, which is kind of scary because if SGA really starts hitting that off the dribble 3, that just makes him officially just an unstoppable 3-level scorer. He's already unstoppable in 2 levels. The 3 ball is the one area where he can be really inconsistent, but I feel like he's been hitting that more and more as the season went along. And he's certainly shown no lack of confidence in it throughout this series thus far. Cason Wallace had a really cool play that I wanted to highlight where the shot clock was running down and he was like running down the lane, falling, and he just kind of threw it. It was almost a no-look pass to Isaiah Joe, who then caught it and did a no-dip 3-pointer to beat the shot clock. I love a good no-dip 3-pointer, so I'm probably going to highlight it literally every time I see it happen. Other than that, there was this one play that I believe it happened in the 3rd quarter. It essentially solidified that OKC was going to win this game for me. I'm going to have to look at my notes the whole time for this because it's a very specific set of things. But Giddey ran a pick and pop with Chet. Chet wasn't quite open, so he did a swing pass over to Aaron Wiggins. Aaron Wiggins then attacked off of the catch, which CJ was not prepared for. Like, he was running over to contest the 3, and then Wiggins quickly burst off of the catch, and that made it to where CJ just like turned his body too quick, and he fell on the ground. Help rotated over because, of course, Wiggins lost his defender very easily, so he threw a pass over to J-Dub on the 3-point line. He pump fakes, or more of a head fake, that loses Ingram. He drives inside and then passes to Wiggins on the cut for a layup. When that play happened, that sequence, all that good ball movement, all that good decision making, the patience, especially for such a young team, it's kind of ludicrous how unselfish the players on this Thunder roster are, because no one's really looking for their own shot unless it's genuinely a good time to look for their shot. I feel like I rarely see plays from this roster where I'm like, wow, that was a selfish play, or that was a forced shot. Sometimes there's a forced shot because that's just all the offense can generate, but shit. In this game, it felt like they were getting a good look constantly. That's kind of the principles of this offense. I talked about it last time in game 1 that OKC is a simplistic offense, but a simplistic offense with strong principles to it. And you felt that in this game. They were just generating good looks constantly. Yeah, that was a wild sequence. This team's just way better. Honestly, the fact that game 1 was pretty close was kind of a fluke to me, especially with Ingram playing as bad as he did. Now, I'm not saying that that can't flip in New Orleans, especially if Ingram starts playing better. Maybe we see a little bit more Larry Nance. Maybe there are some adjustments to be made to potentially make this one more interesting. But more or less, we probably know where this series is going to go from this point. Not that we didn't know already as soon as Zion got hurt. which is a damn shame because I think this could have been an actually very interesting first-round matchup if Zion did play. But let's move on to another series that seemed like it was going to be ruined by injuries, but here we are and it's tied 1-1, and that is, of course, the Celtics versus the Heat. So I'm going to do a lot of... I'm actually not. So I'm not going to be that critical of Boston in this one. There were definitely a lot of things that were their fault for this game, but I also want to spend a lot of time highlighting how Miami executed in this one because goddamn they did it well the whole way through. And to illustrate how they did it well the whole way through, they scored nearly the same amount of points every single quarter. The consistency in which they attacked in this game was actually crazy. Like the sequence of plays were so similar the whole way through, which if anything is illustrative of how Boston should have been able to interrupt this offense more so than they did. But at the bare minimum, Miami executed and then some. They scored 26 points to 30, either 26, 28, I think 28 and 30. That's what they scored every quarter. That's awesome. I feel like you're not going to find that level of consistent scoring volume in any playoff game thus far from any team, unless it was just like someone absolutely dog walking the other team. But yeah, the big factor, they lit it up from outside. They went 23 for 43 from outside, which is 53.5%. And I said, in order for them to win a game in this series, they're going to need an excellent, and I mean an excellent Tyler Hero and Bam game. And they got, I'll say, a very, very good Bam game. Not quite excellent, but very good. And they very much got an excellent Tyler Hero game. Tyler Hero put up 24 points and 14 assists on 6 for 11 shooting from outside. Almost all of those three-pointers were pull-ups. Yeah, there was just some, like, black magic in terms of, like, the Miami Heat black magic of just... You know what? We're just going to hit every three-pointer. Of course, that was a big factor in the Bucks series last year. Hero was really the big driving force, though, this whole way through. The rate in which this guy was generating three-pointers was actually fucking insane. Whether it was his own or finding an open teammate. I would wager that of his 14 assists, minimum 10 of them were three-pointers. Minimum. I know there was a mid-range pick and pop with Bam. I know there was an alley-oop that he threw to Bam out of the pick and roll. But after that, I really can't recall any assists that were not him just passing to an open Caleb Martin, an open Haywood Highsmith. He had a pass to Duncan Robinson where he caught the ball, Duncan flared off of a screen, and he immediately passed it right to him where he was wide open. Yeah, Haywood Highsmith hit a bunch of threes. Really, everybody did. Jaime Jaquez hit his three-pointers. Nikola Jovic hit his three-pointers. In fact, 5 players for the Miami Heat shot 50% from 3 or better on 4 or more attempts. And I believe it was actually 6 or more attempts for 4 out of those 5 players. I think the 4 one was just Haywood Highsmith. But yeah, really, really good game from, really good. He did have 5 turnovers. Nikola Jovic, outside of those 5 turnovers, was really good. He had 6 assists. But of those 5, some of them were really ugly. One of them, he decided to push the ball on the break, and you could hear his entire team yelling at him that Derek White was about to come behind him and steal the ball. And he did not notice or was not ready for it because Derek White indeed came up behind him and stole the ball. It was pretty sad. But yeah, he started off 2 for 2 on corners, opposite corners, hit both of them. 3 for 4 from 3 in general. Actually, I guess he was the one who only took 4. Whatever. Jaime Jaquez hit 3 of his 6 three-pointers. He did struggle inside the arc. He did have one play that I'm more so highlighting this for the pass than Jaime's actual bucket. But Kevin Love was in the post on Al Horford. Or it might not have been Al Horford. He was on the post on somebody. Jaime backdoor cut. He perfectly puts the pass in the right spot. Then Jaime pump fakes. Al Horford's at the basket at this point. I don't remember if he was defending Love or if he was just also there. Loses Horford. Easy layup. Yeah, the big one I haven't mentioned at this point is Caleb Martin. He hits 5 of his 6 three-pointers. Like, 2 of them were really ballsy attempts, like pull-ups in someone's face. 21 points in the game in general. The Heat moved the ball extremely well. Also, for Tyler Hero, I'm not trying to take away any level of credit here, but a lot of this was Boston defending the three-point line terribly, and Hero just making the right, fairly basic reads. So many open looks. so many, like a comical amount of open three-pointers, and that's ultimately what burned them. The other thing, probably the second biggest X factor in this game for why they lost this game outside of the open threes, is Porzingis. Played like dog shit in this one, dude. Absolute ass. 1 for 9 from the field. 1 for 9 from the field. And that's not because he wasn't getting good looks. He was getting solid enough looks, I think. A lot of them, a couple of them, 2 of them were post-ups on Tyler Hero where he just missed like these very, very short, essentially like 10-foot tops jump shots. He also had a possession where he was posting up on Caleb Martin. Double came, he passed it back out, and then Derek White immediately passed it back to him, and he completely fumbled that and crumpled to the floor. Yeah, just a very ugly Porzingis game. Honestly, this kind of emphasizes my point about him being more important than Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown had an awesome game in this one, but it was more or less just, you know, within the flow of the offense. I'm not going to discount the value of putting up 30 points. In terms of how Boston generated offense, the fact that Porzingis was just missing these easy looks when they were generating them pretty consistently, it's just like, at that point, the flow of the offense is broken, and you're waiting for Jaylen or Jason to just bail you out with some ridiculous shot. And both of them did a decent job of doing that throughout most of the game. More or less no-shows in the fourth quarter from the both of them, and especially Jason, as we obviously have a higher level of expectation for him. Jason was very hot in the first quarter. Jaylen Brown hit 3 straight three-pointers and got a transition layup to end the second quarter, which it really felt like that was finally going to swing the momentum in Boston's favor. In fact, I would have definitely guessed that Boston won at that point. Not that I wouldn't have guessed that anyways, even if they were down 10 going into half, because it's Boston versus Miami without Jimmy Butler. But they persevered. They did not flinch at that run whatsoever. They came back in for the third quarter and absolutely kicked ass. The only guy who really came up big for this team late was Derek White. He was really clutch in this game. He hit a pair of three-pointers and got an and one to go on a 9-0 run late in the fourth quarter. He had that steal on Jovic that I previously mentioned. But yeah, that was pretty much the only thing they had going for him, and it became pretty clear about halfway through the fourth quarter that Miami was going to win this game, because Boston just was not generating consistently good offense, relying on a lot of difficult shots going in. And Miami was just feasting on open three-pointers, and you would have thought that Boston would have adjusted and just chased them off of the three-point line as the game went along, but they didn't. And that's just kind of unacceptable for a team that's just not talented enough to have any reason to beat Boston. How much blame in general can we put on them? Because I do think, again, a lot of this was very strong execution from the Heat. I still think they deserve a lot of blame, because they ultimately didn't adjust in any capacity on either end of the floor through the entire thing. And, you know, Boston is a team that I've criticized for not making adjustments in the past, but this one was like weird levels of lack of adjustment. Like, I really feel like nothing changed throughout this entire game. It was the same game the whole way through, more or less, outside of Jaylen and Jason being hotter in the first half than they were in the second half. That's pretty much the only fundamental difference. I completely skipped over the Bam stuff. Bam was quieter most of the game, but he was really dominant in the second half. He finished the game with 21 points in general, and he had 10 in the fourth quarter. Lots of tough fadeaways. He had that pick and pop mid-range with Hero that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, shout out to Bam. He had himself a very good game as well. But yeah, I don't really have too much concern about the Boston Celtics losing this series. No Jimmy means there's just no fucking way. But yeah, they're going to have to do a way better job defending the three-point line if they want any hope of not having one of the most, if not... Would this be the biggest upset in the history of the NBA? The 8th-seeded Heat without their best player? It might be. It just might be. But it's not going to happen. I really have no belief whatsoever that's going to happen, but it is funny, and that's more important than anything else. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye. Why did I do that?